we want to look at the consequences of the pandemic, particularly with relation to organized crime, we really have to start by asking the fundamental question about what we mean by crime. Crime is normally defined by how it is defined by a country, and it's what's agreed on by a state. And there are different ways of looking at that. It might be local law, it's agreed upon, it's not a crime because it's permitted, but it might be considered criminal in terms of international law. So first of all, we need to ask those kind of questions. I raise this question because we just had a very bad administration. The Zuma administration in South Africa was really a criminal administration. It's got cartel, and it stole massively from the people, and we're still suffering as a result of that. Now, what happened is that this cartel, they captured the judiciary. They captured the airline, they captured the electricity generating, the transport. All of these things had what they called tenderpreneurs, people who were siphoning money out of the state systems. Now, it was sort of legal because it was government, but it certainly wasn't, it undermined the nature of the state, and it was assisted by private capital. So, here in South Africa, we're kind of very sensitive about what we mean by crime. Now, we might talk about actions that are legal, but generally the people in the country, and certainly in international law, they might be considered not legal or certainly not at all acceptable. My particular field, I'm a criminologist working with gangs, but I'm also an environmental journalist investigating international and national wildlife crime. And I just want to look into that field for a moment. Wildlife crime is pervasive in South Africa. It is legal in many aspects, and this is much of what the work I do is looking at. In this country, it is legal to sell rhino horns, even though, according to CITES, the International Trade Organization, it's not legal. We export lion bones, which is very unacceptable, certainly with coronavirus. Zoonotic diseases come from... I'll explain what I mean by looking at wildlife trade and hunting. In South Africa, it is permissible to sell rhino horn, though internationally it's not. It's illegal in terms of CITES, the UN organization that looks into, that organizes wildlife trade. It is, we sell lion bones to create fake tiger bone wine, which is really unacceptable and abhorrent internationally, because of zoonotic diseases, of which COVID-19 is one. We allow canned hunting, which is breeding lions in pens for hunters to shoot, which is also considered outrageous by most people in most rest of the world. And we also we have classified, I think, over 100 animals, wild animals, as farm animals, under the Meat Act, which means we can farm them, we can eat them, which includes lions and elephants and all sorts of things, which is, in terms of conservation, very unacceptable. So, this really makes the point of that crime is a sliding scale. What is one person's crime is the other person's business, and it's a problem. So post-coronavirus, or what's actually happening now, I've been looking at poaching and right across Africa. The poaching syndicates in Asia are struggling because of border closures, people are getting locked down. China has closed its wet markets where a lot of the African wildlife goes. And pangolins are considered to be the vector which probably caused coronavirus. In Africa, that's causing a shift in poaching. And because people are locked down, there's a lot of poverty here, and there's no state support for huge numbers of people. They're just not allowed to go to work, so they're hungry. So what's happened is we've had a shift from conventional poaching, as it were, of rhino horn, pangolins, and ivory, to bushmeat. That is, people going out, setting snares, hunting animals for the pot, for food. So that has implications, huge implications for post-pandemic, because a lot of the money that goes into rural areas in Africa is provided by tourism. Now, long-haul flights are definitely shut down at the moment, but they're not going to come back soon. Long-haul flights are not going to come back anytime soon. And so without tourists on the ground, there's no money in a lot of the rural areas. Certainly the lodges, the tour parties, the tour groups, there's no eyes on the ground, and there's hungry people. So bushmeat poaching is going to be around for a long time and that's going to be very bad news for wildlife. There's also the problem of syndicates in the cities. We don't know what's going to happen to the economy. South Africa went into junk status as it went into lockdown. In terms of international, Moody's took us into junk status financially. So we're going to come out of the pandemic desperately poor, as it turns out. I mean, and also industry and the service industry and the tourist industry is going to be decimated. So what is going to happen in the cities? There are a lot of poor people in those cities, and I'm in Cape Town. It's a tourist city. It's the restaurants are closed down. Everything. The hotels are closed down. They're going to get up to speed very slowly. So in the poorer areas, life is not going to get back to normal very easily. And there are lots of gangs. Cape Town has a huge gang problem. So just looking at Cape Town, we're going to have probably the most organized people in those high-risk, low-income areas are going to be the gangs and the syndicates. And as to the degree which the state is unable to deliver, so those syndicates will step in and provide those things. We already see now that they're doing that even under lockdown. The South African state banned the sale of cigarettes and alcohol. And immediately the syndicates and criminal elements stepped in. You can buy your cigarettes, you can buy your alcohol on the black market. So all that the pandemic did in that respect was stimulate the black market, which is doing very well. People who need to smoke, need to drink, will find the ability to do that. The possible good side is that maybe one thing is that the pandemic is showing that the good leaders from the bad leaders. People who are just populist are just not featuring. People who are sure and work with the science and put out honest, like the President Ramaphosa is very good at this. People trust him, and so some leaders are trusted and show that they are able to lead, and others show that they're unable to lead and they're not trusted and they're not doing well. In fact, we don't hear much from them. They're keeping their heads down. So the pandemic may strengthen good leadership, and that's a hope. Another possibility is that South Africa is still very racially polarized. But the pandemic is showing that everybody's in the same boat. Of course, the wealthier are not as badly off as the poor, but there is a sense that we as a country are undergoing this process, and that we as a country, rather than black people or white people or Indians or colored people, it's the people of the country are going through this. And that is a binding force that if we keep that together and keep it in mind, it will be useful. I think also the result will be a shake-up of the economy, a shake-up of government even, and that's very necessary at the moment. Under the Zuma regime, it got very impacted and very unable to shift, and there were blocks of people fighting other blocks of people. Hopefully, the pandemic and the lockdowns are opening up those processes, loosening up the blockages, and we could end up with a much better leadership. And part of that could be that it feeds into the kind of decisions we make around climate change and around the way we use wild animals because of the problems of zoonotic diseases and a whole lot of other things. So, I'm hopeful. I hope we have the wisdom to come out of this in the right way and manage it, even though it's going to be difficult. That remains to be seen. But what's very clear is the country that we're going to have after this pandemic is nothing like the country that we were when we went into it. Everything is going to change here, and it's going to take a lot of political and economic wisdom to come through with this.